After a 10-year defiance of the law, travellers of Dale Farm finally had to let go of their homes. The 6-acre site in Essex took the police just a few hours to carry out their operation of evicting all those who tried to stand their ground. It was the biggest traveller site in the UK, housing over 1,000 people, and was completely illegal. But in the build-up to the eviction, many people believed they got what was coming to them. Some may say, how dare they break the law and try and get away with it, whilst others may see this as a tragic consequence of families who cannot afford to get on the property ladder. My name is Myles Dyer, it is Thursday, October 20th, and you are listening to Podcast 376. Hello everyone. Now, I appreciate not everyone knows about Dale Farm, and to be honest, I don't think that matters with this conversation, because it is something we'll all be able to connect with in one way or another. But Dale Farm is a 6-acre plot of land which is in Essex, which is just outside of London in England. And there have been about 1,000 people who have been housed there for 10 years, which makes a lot of people question, well, how has it gone on for this long? 10 years is plenty of time to settle down. So obviously the emotional element, it would be even higher now than it would have been if action had been taken to evict these people right from the beginning. But protesters were also there. The eviction had been considered by the council for months now. But it's been taken to the courts. There were appeals made by the people living there. But finally, it was overruled that an eviction must take place. And yes, there were lots of protesters there. The police came armed with taser guns, batons, and shields. So it was very full on. All the press were there. Lots of cameras. And actually, when they were taking down the barricades that were put up, all the camera people were following the police through as people try to stand their ground. But in the end, the whole place was evicted. It resulted in about 6 people being injured and 23 arrests. And one of the people there was taken to hospital with back injuries. But like most news stories, this already sounds like just, a load of statistics. There's no real human element to it unless people want to sort of imagine what the human element could have been. But the Telegraph, I'll just take a quote from that, which really does give a part of the human story, which was this. One man had used a bicycle D-lock to attach his neck to a horizontal beam at the top of the barricade, claiming that he would hang if police tried to remove him. In the event, specialist climbing forces used a cherry picker crane to lower themselves onto the scaffold tower and cut him free with a mechanical saw. But it really does show the desperation that was there. And as I've said already, living there 10 years, it's plenty of time to be attached to somewhere which is your home. And as already said in the build-up to this, there have been a lot of people vocalising their opinions, saying, I cannot believe this has taken 10 years, and, the law applies to everyone, and those who disobey it should feel the full force of the law. But something I keep mentioning again and again is that society is just full of enforcing reactive measures to problems, which are called laws. And as far as I'm concerned, laws are just put in place when the government have failed to deal with the problem in the first place. Now, how does that relate to here? Well, it's the fact that there was something in the environment of these travellers growing up that meant that they had to live in a place like Dale Farm. I do not accept for a second that these people were doing it to sort of give the fingers to the law, or, they weren't doing it to intentionally break the law. They did it out of desperation. They're not evil. They were just people that needed a home for their families. They found this land, they were able to set up a home, and after 10 years, they would have got a lot of emotional momentum with feeling that they had a right to live there. And there will be plenty of people who are very heavily against what I've just said, because they're like, well, I obey the law, so why should other people be allowed to break it? And when the eviction of Dale Farm was discussed a few weeks ago on a radio station called LBC 97.3, London's biggest conversation, on the James O'Brien show, James O'Brien being actually an old hero of mine, you can listen to it on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Blade376. The point he made was that these people had a choice to live there. They didn't have to, and they chose to live there and thus chose to break the law. And this was my response to that.
Yeah, but you're saying it's a choice. A choice is based on a selection of choices.
It is.
And the decision is based on money and how much money you have. And the only reason that properties are going up in society is due to scarcity. It's why we have to pay so much for particular items.
Yes.
And I don't want to digress too much, but in society today, and some people are going to find this incredibly crazy, but I've been researching this the past year, we have the technology and the know-how to produce enough for everybody on the planet in terms of food, clothing, housing.
And so what I was talking about there was the bigger picture, because there is always a much bigger picture. But in society, we look at the individual problems and deal with them without looking beyond at the causes and ensuring they don't happen again. And, that happens in media, mainstream media. It would be a bit of a weird one to do a radio show where you're constantly talking about the bigger picture. It's easier to say, look at these people that were illegally living here. How does this make you feel? People get angry at how dare they break the law, when actually, if we could actually work on finding solutions, we would never have to feel angry about it, because people would be offered a much better quality of life, and we would help each other build a much better society. And James O'Brien, who was doing that show there, I deeply respect. And being on a mainstream radio station, I'm sure he can't have too much favour towards what I was proposing. So he ended with these words, which definitely made me feel perhaps he did believe me deep down inside.
And you may be right, although, I'm sure you are right in much of what you say, but you may be leaping to slightly premature conclusions about the global picture. I'm not sure. I'm going to draw attention back to the specifics of the situation in Essex now.
You may see what I was saying now about going back to the individual issues, but, I understand that. It's a mainstream radio station. Talking about the bigger picture perhaps isn't for entertainment, although LBC is very informative at the same time, so I do give them credit. It's why I do listen to it from time to time, although not so much anymore. Now I have been someone who constantly tries to look at the bigger picture, and that was actually one of my attempts of giving the radio station another try, and already I've found a bit of an end point to how far I could go with that. But yesterday I went to a meeting with UNICEF because of a charity event I do called Stick Aid. Every year it's a 24-hour non-stop live show I do. I've done it for 5 years now. Please look it up if you haven't before. And when I was at this event, it was just a thanks to people who'd contributed a lot to UNICEF in the past. And there was a member of Parliament there, a big politician called Lord Ashdown, Paddy Ashdown. And they just spoke about the work they had done with UNICEF, the children's charity. And it was fantastic, the stories they were saying. And how is this relevant to the Dale Farm thing? Well, they opened the floor up to questions after they spoke, and I managed to ask a question to Lord Ashdown, which was, when are we going to start allowing scientists to have a much bigger say when it comes to making policies to create solutions to problems, and how can we put pressure on the government for that? And in the context of those starving all over the world, I was talking about hydroponics and vertical farms, which are solutions to the root causes of the problem, and not just about reactive measures, which is, feed the people once they're starving. We should find out how to ensure they're not starving in the first place. But I still commend everything UNICEF does. I was just looking, I guess, at the bigger picture again. And by no means am I trying to sound patronising. All I'm trying to do is contribute something constructive. And I guess that's always the worry when I talk about these issues, is I'm not trying to put down anything that's been done before. I'm just saying, can we also consider this? But it was fantastic because Lord Ashdown actually took a lot of interest in what I said, and he asked me to contact him afterwards, which I definitely will be doing, to see if they can bring up maybe these things in Parliament, which was incredible. And there were a lot of elderly people there, and being a young person, you always want to kind of show that young people have a lot to give as well. And I had quite a lot of elderly people just say, keep going, and that was just really, really nice. But I digress. Back to Dale Farm. You know, the main point of this podcast actually was what I'm about to talk about now, because there was a lot of negativity towards these travellers. But the main reason I think people feel this way is just due to the mental construct of superiority. You know, when it comes to headlines about those that abuse the law, it is much easier for a society as a whole, for like mob mentality, to complain and vent anger to those who, you know, are below you, claiming welfare, on the dole, who are struggling in life. It's much easier to look down on them as opposed to the people above you, like the bankers who are raking in millions of pounds and dollars every day through fraud, tax evasion, manipulating the system, etc. And I guess the same could be said about the Occupy Wall Street and other Occupy movements around the world right now. You know, many people in government and in the mainstream media have said that these protesters should go get a job, with no true consideration to the fact that perhaps the fact they have tried to get a job and failed may be the reason that they're protesting in the first place. But, you know, it's just easier to condemn these people because they deserve what they got, right? And in my opinion, anyone who thinks that really needs a big dosage of the empathy pill. Because as I say again and again, the difference between you and those that are less fortunate is circumstance. That is an absolute fact. And the people on Dale Farm who were defending their homes are people that were brought up in an environment where they didn't have a decent house. They didn't have the money to get a proper property. And therefore, after 10 years, they defended it as much as they could. Some of them got arrested, some of them got injured, but all of them have ended up homeless. So there's a lot of negativity towards them, people saying they deserve what they got, but it's just because we live in a society where one person's gain is another person's loss. And, you know, a lot of people think, I don't want my taxpayers' money going towards them getting a free ride with the law. And you know what? Some of the people actually said on the news who were evicted that on November 5th they will be marching down to Parliament, joining the Occupy London protests. And that just explains everything we're seeing in the world right now. People are fed up with inequality. People want a reform. But a lot of people, once again, look down on these people and go, oh, it's just people that want freebies. It's not about freebies. It's about allowing people to have the opportunity to make a better life for themselves and the people around them. That's what it comes down to. And anyone who thinks differently, please do reconsider. So after telling that story about Dale Farm, I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts on that and whether or not you are one of those people that feels they broke the law, they got what was coming to them, or perhaps you empathise with them and feel that it just shows a failure of the system. You may feel both. That's completely allowed. As always, you can contact me on twitter.com/podcast376, facebook.com/podcast376, and be sure to subscribe on youtube.com/podcast376. And on that channel, you can submit any questions and topics for future discussion. And on that note, I want to say thank you for listening once more, and I will see you again on another Podcast 376.